morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Happy to be here today to share Olam Agri's journey in nature risk assessments and how we're embedding it into our financial performance and planning processes, as well as business strategy. So, to give some context on Olam Agri, for those who may not already know, Olam Agri is a agribusiness in the food, feed, and fiber business, and we trade and also do value-added processing for commodities like soy, rice, wheat, rubber, cotton, and timber. And we've always recognized that the company is underpinned by nature. The success of the company depends on nature. And so nature assessments have always been a part of the business. And when the TNFD was announced in 2023, we had signed up to be an early adopter, and our report will be out for the financial year 2025 next year. So just to give an overview in the next slide, we have we are following a 5-step framework for climate and nature resilience. So starting with building capability and awareness both within the company and also being a part of external consultations for framework standards and in forums. Secondly, we are doing climate and nature risk assessments in a structured manner, and also taking it back to our finance teams to validate and with our business teams on the ground as well. Thirdly, we are integrating these identified climate and nature risks and opportunities into our existing enterprise processes. Fourthly, we are connecting our current climate and nature action to financial performance, as this is a key indicator to the business in terms of capital allocation. And lastly, our ultimate goal is to build long term value and resilience in the company, as we recognize this would be important in terms of the valuation of the company. So to give a little bit more of a flavor to how we actually value our climate and nature risk assessments, how we go about doing that. In the next slide, this is an overview of our approach to assessing nature risks. So we have scoped into our assessment 8 commodities across 15 countries and 23 supply chains. And we start by looking at the impacts and dependencies. So for impacts, we are looking at these impact metrics: water use, air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, and land use. And this follows the TNFD framework as well as the LEAP approach that was mentioned earlier. So based on the assessment of the magnitude of our impacts on these areas as well as the state of nature of each location, a scoring is a constant score is given to each metric across our commodities. An example of this is shown here on the screen. And next, this impacts then gives rise to potential financial risks, which we identify by looking at the potential changes that the world may be going towards. So, for example, customers and markets may be shifting their expectations of how companies should be managing their impacts, and this could lead to reputational damage if not managed well. There may be also regulatory changes, for example, the EU deforestation product regulation, which affects our timber and rubber businesses. And next, we look at our dependencies across these metrics like water supply, soil quality, pollination, and biological control, which refers to natural pest control. So if these ecosystem services are under threat, it could lead to physical risk to the business, which we look at next. So and nature risks are also very location specific, right? So any impacts that we make in the location could come back and bite us because we depend on the very same ecosystem services. So, for example, rice is mainly grown in uh, I mean, India is a big exporter of rice, and but many regions in India actually face high water stress. And if the risks are not managed well, this could impact our supply chain and in turn impact like our processing or trading business as well. So next, so that's the modeling part of the nature or climate risk assessment. It's more of a desktop exercise. But importantly, we have to bring it down to reality and sort of validate it with our business teams and our finance teams as well. So we have we are working with our corporate finance teams and our business and local finance teams on the ground to ground truth the results of our model analysis. And on in steps 2 and 3, that's exactly what we're doing, which is to identify if there are any historical impacts that have been seen uh, and recorded in our financials. For example, if there have been floods, sorry, if there are hazards like floods or droughts that have been modeled in our analysis, i- and I and we have identified certain high risk locations or assets, we would bring that to the business to verify if in the past 3 or 5 years, if they have indeed faced such a threat, and if there have been any financial losses uh, recorded. We also need to determine the management's response to this. So for example, if there have been any climate adaptation measures that have taken place, like building uh, dikes to prevent floods, or if insurance has been taken up to sort of buffer any losses. And fourthly, we need to apply the appropriate accounting treatment and ensure that it has been properly accounted for. Um, for example, for impairment, we have not seen this being done, but in order for impairment to be done, there has to be historical evidence of such a threat for at least a few years. So this is something that needs to be constantly monitored. And the last step would be to embed any effects into the financial statements if not already done, and report it as part of IFRS sustainability disclosure standards, which we are stepping up to in the financial 2025 as well. Next slide, please. Right. So I have talked about the second pillar, how we assess the climate and nature risks. The third pillar on uh, integrating these risks and opportunities into our enterprise processes include our capital deployment through our ESG due diligence process, where before we decide on potential new investments, we look into the climate risk assessment as well for these potential new investments. And that would influence the assessment of the project. Secondly, we are integrating our sustainability risk and corresponding controls into the enterprise risk management framework. And this is important because we want any risk and controls to be integrated to our existing business processes so that the relevant departments and business teams would take charge of financial risks that would impact them directly. And the fourth pillar on connecting climate and nature action to financial performance is about identifying and assessing the returns on investments of our sustainability actions. So we have developed a sustainability P&L and sustainability CAPEX for this purpose. And in the next slide, we show the overview of what we mean by sustainability P&L. So we across Olam Agri in our various businesses, we do have many sustainability programs. For example, sustainable farming programs where we train farmers on sustainable farming practices, and these projects have both value to business as well as value to society. So for value to business, these include incremental revenue. For example, we may earn premiums from complying with certain sustainability regulations like the EUDR and having access to that EU market. Another example is selling sustainable certified rice, which may have a premium above conventional rice as well. And cost reduction relates to efficiency gains. So these costs and benefits, they are hidden in accounting. So the point of the sustainability P&L is to highlight these costs and benefits so that we can enable better allocation of funds across projects. And the other aspect, value to society, I think was mentioned by Rosie as well, not traditionally accounted for. And we do this through natural and social capital accounting to put a value on how these projects improve farmer livelihoods, reduce environmental impacts. And this whole sustainability P&L, we are embedding into our existing financial performance and planning processes, like our business review meetings, where businesses discuss their financial performance for the quarter. We are integrating this into annual budgeting as well as our BU strategy refresh. And next slide, please. In this slide, I'm just showing a sample of what the sustainability P&L looks like in terms of the value to business. So incremental gross contribution refers to the incremental profit from that sustainable product, that sustainable program. So for example, premiums earned from the product. And we then measure like any incremental expenses that may be needed to incur for this project. And finally, the incremental EBITDA. And in the next slide, for the value to society, using natural and social capital valuation methods, typically using peer-reviewed literature out there for methodologies. We value the impacts that we have on nature and society, including farmer livelihoods and the various environmental impact metrics. In the next slide. So this finally just to emphasize the last point here, the last pillar of our framework. Our North Star is really to drive long-term value and resilience, and to incentivize our businesses to properly allocate funds towards sustainability investments and action. Because we recognize that ultimately the company's market value would be impacted, and we would also be able to get lower cost of capital uh, to elevate our market valuation. Right, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.